Hey everybody, my name is David Hayden. I'm a .NET developer in Sarasota, Florida, and a Microsoft MVP in C#. In this screencast, I'm going to be talking about the new policy injection application block in Enterprise Library 3.0. In particular, I'm going to show how this block can help us do caching in an ASP.NET web application. So with that, let's go ahead and jump over to Visual Studio. And what I've done is I've already created a web application just to save us some time, and I've already referenced the necessary Enterprise Library 3.0 assemblies. So with any time we use Enterprise Library, we always need the common and object builder assemblies, and in this case, because we're using the policy injection block, I've also referenced those two assemblies as well. So let's pretend we have this website and it needs to go ahead and access news from a news service. So I'm going to create a class called news service, and it's going to have one method called get news, and it's the data that comes from this method that we want to have cached for us. Now normally this would go ahead and probably get information from a database or a web service or some rather expensive call. In our case, just for demonstration purposes, we're just going to go ahead and return an array list. So that's our news service. Now in order for this to actually be interceptable by the policy injection block, one of two things needs to be done here. It either has to implement a known interface, or it needs to derive from Marshall by ref object. Now normally I would probably go ahead and just use a interface, but let's go ahead and just derive it from Marshall by ref object just to make things simple. So that's all we need to do to actually have it be intercepted by the policy injection block. In order for caching to happen on our behalf, we can do this a number of ways, but by far the easiest way is to implement this caching call handler attribute on the actual method, and then in the constructor itself specify in hours, minutes, and seconds how long you want the data cached. Now normally this would be a longer time, but just for demonstration purposes we'll say 15 seconds. So that's it. That's all we need now in order to use this class with the policy injection block and to have caching done on our behalf. So the only other thing I'm going to add to this, and again this is just for demonstration purposes, I'd like to be able to see when get news is being called. What I'm going to do is just have it send out a trace message, just to let us know when this actual method is being called. And when it does get called, I'm going to say getting news from database. That's as good as any. So now what happens when we turn page tracing on in ASP.NET, if this method actually gets called, we should see this warning message. If it gets intercepted by the policy injection block, we won't see this message. So that's it. So the only thing we have to do now is just prepare ourselves to go ahead and use this class. Now because we're going to be using page tracing, I'm going to go ahead and just add that here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on tracing. Again, that's for demonstration purposes. Now in the code behind, let's go ahead and get this news service. So we're going to say we want the news service. Now normally you would probably do something like new news services. New news service. But remember now we're using the policy injection block here, and we want it to intercept that class. So to use the policy injection block, you're going to do policy injection.create, and I'm actually going to go ahead and just specify the news service class. And that's it. So that goes ahead and gives us our news service class. And then to actually get the news, we'll call get news. Okay, so what's going to happen here is when we make this call here to policy injection.create, the policy injection block is going to look at this news service class. The first thing it's going to see is if it's interceptable. Does it implement a known interface, or does it derive from Marshall by ref object? If it does, then it's going to go ahead and look at the class and see if there are any policies against it. Now in our case we do have a policy against it because we added the attribute caching a call handler attribute and specified that the data coming from that method should be cached in the ASP.NET Cache for 15 seconds. So when it finds that, it's not going to actually be returning the concrete news service class, but a proxy on its behalf. Okay, and we're going to see that. So I'm going to go ahead and run this now. And what we're going to see in the trace is that the get news from database, we'll see that message there, which means that method was actually called. And if we refresh it like I am doing now within 15 seconds, you'll notice it's not being called anymore. That's because the policy injection block intercepted the call and is grabbing the data from the cache itself because it cached the information after the first call. So again, within the 15 seconds time span here, we're seeing that you're not going to get those messages and the method is not being called. But if we wait after 15 seconds, that data, that new array list is actually going to be removed from the cache, and the policy injection block is going to notice that and allow that method to be called again. Once that call finishes, it's going to grab that data again and stick it in the cache. So it's probably been 15 seconds now. If I refresh this, boom, there it is. The get news from database shows up in our trace information again, which means that method has been called. If I refresh it again within 15 seconds, you'll notice that that now the method has been intercepted again and is no longer being called. So that's it. That's all it takes to use the policy injection block with an ASP.NET website and use for caching. If you have any questions or you're looking for information on Enterprise Library 3.0, I have quite a few tutorials, quite a few posts about it. You can go to any one of my websites at davidhayden.com. I've also started a new website called pmpguidance.net. It's new. There's not a lot of information on there, but slowly I'm going to be building that up and putting more and more information on that. And you can also find me on codebetter.com. I appreciate you coming to this screencast, and if you have any positive or constructive feedback, I'd love to hear it. Thank you very much.